Hello music fans, you're watching Death by Unicorn. Today I'm talking about my top 10 favorite metal albums of 1988. Continuing my series where I'm doing this, my top 10 albums of every year in the 80s. So if you haven't watched my previous videos, check those out after this. Before I get into my top 10, I'll start off with two honorable mentions. First honorable mention is actually going to be a demo by Psychotic Waltz. It's their self-titled demo. Very cool, early progressive metal band, and I enjoyed their demo. The second one, honorable mention, is going to be In the Spirit of Things by Kansas. This is hard rock with art rock influences. It's the 11th album by Kansas. Unfortunately, it is my least favorite of theirs so far up to this point in their career. There were no hit singles on here, and it's lost their progressive sound that I like so much, but it's still very well played, catchy hard rock music. The other downside of this is it seems like it leaned more into religious and Christian themes in their music around this time, which I didn't really like. But if you can look past those flaws, music and playing is still pretty cool here. Now let's get into the top 10 proper. Number 10 is In the City of Angels by John Anderson. This is a pop rock album. It's the fifth solo album by the Yes lead singer John Anderson. And unlike most of his previous solo works, this one contains many additional songwriters. So he had help here in songwriting. It's more commercial sounding than what he previously did. Members of Toto perform on several songs, and they're great players, of course. As an aside, Toto is a band that I totally forgot to do a deep dive on and include in this series. But I should say I've heard Toto 4 in its entirety. I love it. So it probably should have been at about number 7 in my 1982 video. Maybe way down the line, years from now, I'll redo this whole series and I'll include it. And at number 9 of 1988, I have No Exit by Fate's Warning. This is progressive metal. It's their fourth album. It ends with an almost 22-minute prog metal epic called The Ivory Gates of Dreams. The guitar playing and composition on this album is great. I would probably rank it even higher in my list if I liked the vocal style and the production more. The vocals by Ray Alder are very over the top for me, even though he is talented. On this album and many of the early Fates Warning albums, they sound like Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, and Jeff Tate, but even more highly exaggerated and operatic and just taken to the extreme of that sound and that style of singing. The production isn't as polished to my ears as similar work by Queensryche or the prog metal that will come later in time, like Dream Theater. So it's a bit more raw and has that crazy, intense, over the top, operatic, powerful vocals. All right, number 8 of 1988 is No Rest for the Wicked by Ozzy Osbourne. This is heavy metal and hard rock. It's his fifth solo album. This is the first one to feature Zakk Wylde on guitar. And I don't like Zakk Wylde as a guitarist as much as his two predecessors in this band, but he is still pretty good, just not my favorite for the Ozzy Osbourne band. I still prefer Randy Rhoads and Jake Ely in that order. Randy Rhoads, I think, is the best, then Jake Ely, then Zakk Wylde for Ozzy Osbourne. Number 7 is So Far, So Good, So What by Megadeth. This is thrash metal, their third album. I can do without the cover of Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols, but other than that, it's a good album. You do have to be prepared for Dave Mustaine's strange and distinct vocal style on here. It's not for everyone, but I love the guitar playing here. I think everyone can enjoy and agree on that, or almost everyone. Number 6 is Ram It Down by Judas Priest. This is more of a traditional heavy metal album, but it's got a bit of the glammy hair metal and synth and pop of the time influence thrown in than most other Judas Priest albums. This is their 11th album, and I think it's a bit underrated in their catalog for that reason, because it's got a bit of that glam influence in with the heavy metal. But I think it's a lot of fun, even though it is a bit cheesy. So check out Ram It Down by Judas Priest as my number 6 album of 1988. Number 5 is Dimension Atros. I think it's pronounced Dimension Atros. I've heard a lot of people say Dimension Hatros. It's by the band Voivod. And this is avant-garde progressive thrash metal. It's their 4th album. Like the albums that they released before, this combines thrash metal with prog rock, especially the dissonant style of prog rock that you hear from on some King Crimson songs. And it combines all that with hardcore punk and crossover thrash energy. And this is where they really hit their stride for me, but my favorite material from them is still to come after this. So check out Dimension Atros by Voivod. And number 4 is Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden. This is heavy metal. It's got some more progressive influences than their earlier material. This is their 7th album. It features the single Can I Play With Madness, but my favorite track is probably the title track, which is almost 10 minutes long, has more progressive influence than most of the other tracks on the album. Number 3 is Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. This is kind of a heavy metal album, but a little bit of progressive metal as well. It's a concept album, and I think it's the best Queensryche album. This is, it's like a concept album rock opera. It's a story. It follows Nicky, a drug addict who becomes disillusioned with the corrupt society of his time and reluctantly becomes involved with a revolutionary group as an assassin of political leaders. The singles on this album were Eyes of a Stranger and I Don't Believe in Love, both catchy songs. I also enjoy The Needle Lies, Revolution Calling, and Speak, as well as the title track. Really great album. And I think it's Queensryche's best, although they have some other pretty good ones too that are close. Number 2, I'm going to pick a weird one. I don't normally include compilation albums. I have to make an exception for this. It's Past Masters by the Beatles, which was released in 1988. It wasn't recorded in 1988. Of course, it was recorded in the mid to late 60s. And I'm including it because it contains songs that weren't on any of their 12 UK studio albums or on the US Magical Mystery Tour album. So this mostly consists of songs that were on the Beatles singles. It has a couple German versions of their songs. I Want to Hold Your Hand and She Loves You. They do those two in German. It features songs from the Long Tall Sally EP. And I like the volume 2. It's got 2 volumes to it. It's a 2-disc album. I like volume 2 a lot more than volume 1 just because I prefer the later Beatles material over their earlier material, and I think their songs are going chronological order from when they were made on this compilation. So if you don't like the early Beatles as much, maybe just listen to volume 2 and that'll have the great stuff. I like to listen to both. I still enjoy some early Beatles, but I just prefer the later Beatles. So check out Past Masters by the Beatles. And then my number 1 of 1988 is And Justice for All by Metallica. This is progressive thrash metal. It's their 4th album and their first to feature bassist Jason Newsted following the death of their previous bassist Cliff Burton. The mix on this album has been criticized for its nearly inaudible bass guitar, but I like the songs and the mix isn't bothering me too much. My favorite track on here is One. So check out And Justice for All by Metallica. And that is it for my top 10 albums of 1988. Let me know what your favorite albums of 1988 are down below in the comments. And what do you think of my list? And stay tuned for my next video in this series, which will be on 1989. And then I think after that, I might do like a top 25 albums of the entire decade of the 80s and kind of round up, pick my 25 favorites from all these videos that I did here. And that's it. Peace out.